Welcome to Inside Startup Investing, the only podcast where you can invest in every guest. On this episode, I will be speaking with founder and CEO of SmartDrone, Rob Cammack. SmartDrone is a drone technology company focused on helping land surveyors to do their work in a far more efficient and timely manner than was ever thought possible. Put it this way. Imagine needing to survey 300 acres of farmland for a real estate transaction in order for the lawyers to get comfort with closing the deal. Something like that could take several hundred man-hours. With SmartDrone, that can be done in a couple of hours. Pretty amazing stuff. A few things that stuck out to me about SmartDrone are first, about a decade ago, there was a lot of hype. One might call it the hype cycle. That drones were going to take over the world and be flying all around us. And then most of the venture-backed companies went under, drones became uncool, and in the meantime, real builders got to work building unique end applications for drone technologies. Now we are entering a phase where drone technology is actually becoming applicable to solving real-world problems with real-world business models that can thrive. Second, Robert has identified the land surveyor market as one with an acute personnel problem and time-intensive nature that could be solved in a dramatic way with drone technology. Rather than a few guys traipsing around acres of land for creating maps of property lines and the like, Robert's smart drones can map and survey land with LiDAR and sonar technology in minutes in a really intelligent way that saves massive amounts of time and man-hours to get the job done. Lastly, Robert is an experienced founder with real prior exits. He knows how to build businesses that make money, and they are entering a phase of growth now with strong product market fit across both selling their own drone technology as well as providing service contracts to land surveyors. And with tens of thousands of land surveyors out there and no other notable player in the space, he and his team seem poised for a bright future. So with that, let's get on to the show and welcome Robert. So for those who don't know much about kind of drones and the drone market, let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about what your business actually is.
Okay, well, SmartDrone, we're a fully integrated drone tech company. What that means is we produce our own hardware, our own software. We also offer professional services and data processing. So everything that our initial target market of land surveyors needs to use drone tech, we deliver.
All right, so let's dig in on that a little bit. First off, drones are obviously kind of a growing, emerging category, and it's interesting because they kind of got hyped up, I'd say, almost a decade ago, and then it seemed like kind of the bottom fell out, and I imagine the actual builders were at work during that time, and now we're really starting to see these very interesting applications of drone technology, yours being one of them. How did you get into this business?
Yeah, well, actually, about a decade ago, I had exited a couple of businesses I had started. I'd done very well, and I was looking for something new to do. And so I started with my own resources, little angel investing. And one of the companies I invested in was a few guys starting up out of University of Arizona, and they were winning all these hackathons with drones. And I thought, well, that's really cool. And we got introduced, and kind of things aren't always planned, right? So it just kind of randomly we got together. I was their first investor and mentor, and I learned a lot about the drone space through that. And it was what I call wild, wild west. It was anything goes. There wasn't really any regulation. It was very immature for the time, and this was in 2015. And the opportunity I saw coming from business background and having a few successful startups was we had a lot of hobbyists, enthusiasts, and a lot of real smart engineering guys who were putting together these drones just because they love drones. And they were developing the technology. There was a lot of open source, a lot of garage stuff going on. But what was lacking is the business skills. Some of them were raising some pretty good investment money to get started. The application of it all went into tech, which you have to have the tech, you have to have the product, but the business side wasn't there. They weren't recognizing who their customers were, what was the value they bring, how were they going to market it, how were they going to deliver these resources. And I saw this over and over as I was invested in the industry. And what I also saw was this massive untapped market. And we all know that robots are the future. And so that aspect of getting involved early on really got my interest. And these guys, they were great. They had a lot of passion, and they were able to get some prototypes together, but not get a product to market. So I offered them the opportunity to restart down here in Texas. And one of the founders actually came, and he's a co-founder, Taylor Dixon, brilliant guy. He's been with me the whole time on our drone journey. And we were able to actually, in about a year, get a product to market. And that was our first Discovery drone platform. And it's been great to get to that point. You know, you have all these milestones in a startup, major milestone to actually sell a drone. And we sold that drone for $65,000. So it was a pretty good hit. And we learned a lot along the way. Last year, we introduced our Discovery 3 model. So even better. And we've been able to, really over the last year and a half, nail the business model. So we have revenues. We've done work in 18 states. We've sold product into, I think, about 8 states now, all across the country. We have about 200 customers, and, things are really clicking. So
I love that. Well,
yeah.
take a step back here. The specific end application that you're focused on is kind of like this land purveying market. What is the problem that you're solving, and who is the buyer that is purchasing this?
Yeah, so there's about 50,000 registered professional land surveyors in the United States. And these guys, the vast majority are small businesses. They've got 20 or less people on staff, owner operator, you've got the licensed professional, and it's his show. And I've talked with over 200 of these guys directly, and they're great people, love these guys. They're struggling. Their 3 big pain points are, one is people, getting the staff, because the industry isn't replenishing with new staff. It's a very hard job. It takes a lot of time to get your professional credential. It takes a lot of field time. Just getting the non-credentials, just the field techs, is a chore. It's hard work. So people is their number one problem. The second problem they face is fear of missing out. They know that drones are a big part of the future for land surveying, but they don't have the bandwidth, or they're scared, will they have the expertise and be able to maintain it to adopt drone technology, or are their competitors or larger companies going to get it first and push them further out of the market? And then their third problem is just the general headaches of running a small business, which if we all started out, we know what that's like. And but people. So what we're able to do with our drone technology is take a job. We use an example. I surveyed about 150 surveyors. We use a specific real world project. It was 300 acres. How long would it take them to map this out for a normal deliverable for their end users? They said it would take 2 to 3 crews of 2 to 3 men, 2 to 3 months to do this project. Why the wide range? Because there's so many variables once they get started into a project. The topography, the vegetation, all these things come into play. So it's a wide range. The average cost for them to do the project was $145,000.
Wow.
Now, my very first, I test everything before we send anything out to the market. Our very first Discovery model, I went out to this project. I only had training in the office. I went out, brought one more guy to take some pictures. I did that project start to finish with a survey grade deliverable ready to go in 7 hours, myself and one Discovery drone. So the value proposition is immense. We solved that shortage of staff problem with this immense gain in productivity.
Not being in the segment, I've seen land surveyors myself, come from a family of civil engineers, so have a good sense of what that looks like. But what are the reasons why people do have land surveyed, and what are the types of things that they're collecting and gathering when they're doing that?
Sure. Well, there's two main types that most consumers are familiar with. One is the boundary survey, and drones don't do that. That's very legal, has a high degree of precision, and a lot of fights can happen if you don't have the right property line with your neighbor, right? So that's when people buy a house or they buy a piece of property, what's going to mark the boundaries, okay? And that has to be done and legally certified. That's why they have to be credentialed, trained, professional, and licensed. So that's not what drones do. That's a different thing. But when it comes to topographical mapping, building a contour model of the ground for construction purposes or just general navigation and mapping purposes, that's where drones come into play and give that immense productivity boost. You can imagine if you have a big forest that's really thick, with the ground-based equipment, they have to do what they call cut line, which means they have to cut line of sight from point to point to put their ground-based equipment on and shoot lasers and things to measure the angles and the distance and to get the elevations, to factor out elevations. Now, you take a drone, you fly it up above the forest, fly it over it, and we have LiDAR. And LiDAR is kind of like the idea of radar or sonar, except we're using very low power lasers. Our current unit sends out about 1.2 million pulses a second. And these hit the trees, they get through the canopy, they hit the ground, and they all bounce back up. And we have very sophisticated receivers that receive that information. And kind of like a radar gun, it times the distance to return, and it calculates the distance. We also have very sensitive GPS on board that tells us exactly where the drone is located. And then we have some equipment that is very sensitive to how the drone is tilted or angled when that shot goes out and is received. All of that gets time-stamped inside. We have software that processes that, software that we develop, that processes that to build that topographical model. And then from that point, we have different exports that come out of our software that just flow right into surveyors' CAD softwares. So they're able to take and very quickly get instead of getting on that 300-acre example, instead of getting about 25,000 points identified, they can get 100 million points identified.
Now, have you developed all of these different technologies, or are you pretty much packaging up the LiDAR, the sonar, all these technologies, and then packaging them into this one drone solution?
Yeah, what we're very proud of is we were actually the first in the world to do a fully integrated package for surveying and mapping. So what does that mean? What's the opposite of that? Well, what had been happening is you have an airframe. You buy the drone. Then you buy your sensor components. You buy a LiDAR sensor unit, or you buy a camera unit. And then you have to attach that together. They're different manufacturers. Then you have to install different softwares for your drone, for your sensor unit, these things. Then you have to have another set of software to take the data and process it and get it to a standard deliverable format. So what we did is we saw that surveyors, they didn't need all this hassle because it made it scary for them. Who are they going to train to do all this? Well, how are they going to update if it needs updates? So what we did is we solved that problem by putting everything in one package. We kind of say everything you need is in the box. If you look at our drone, often people say, where's the LiDAR? Where's the sensors? Well, you pick it up and you look on the bottom, it's recessed into the housing. It's not like your normal drones where everything's kind of hanging off like a big monster spider type thing. I knew our drones needed to be approachable, because if we're going to have robot adoption at scale, it can't be scary. And this is basically a flying robot with lasers. We don't want it to be too scary, right? So we made it approachable in all-in-one. So when a surveyor looks at our thing, they're like, oh, you mean for just one price, I get all of this. I have a single point of responsibility with a single vendor and makes it a lot easier than trying to put together your own package.
And is there software layered onto this as well that kind of, ingest everything that it's collecting and then makes it easy for them to download or use where they need it?
Yeah, we have our proprietary software that we built called the Pulse Processor. We built this with interviewing and working in office with a dozen surveyors to fully understand their needs, what mattered and what didn't matter. And of course, we've evolved that over time to where there's not a lot of more evolution room available to enhance what the surveyor gets from our Pulse Processor. So we're very proud of that as well. And a big difference is surveyors were worried if they get into drones, most everyone out there makes you pay subscriptions and or extra fees to upload your raw data to them on the cloud. They process it with their software and send it back to you, and you get charged for that. Well, they didn't like the unknown cost. What's that going to cost? They didn't like losing control of their data, and they didn't like security aspects of sending their data out. With our software, everything stays in-house on their PC. They don't have to send it to the cloud. They process it. We've streamlined and made it very easy for them to get exactly what they need from our software. And there's no subscription fee when they buy our platform.
Okay, so let's talk about that business model a little bit. So you're just charging for the drone. What is the price of the drone? And then is there any other sort of fees that you're charging on a recurring basis?
Sure. Our current drone is about $57,000. That's everything a surveyor needs to get started and get deliverables like I talked about with that forest and topographical model. It has, everything they need. Now, another great thing, and not to get into too much specific detail, but this is going towards investor market, is we have really nice gross margins, and they can look in our SEC offering and they can see in those details. I'm very proud of those margins. I've had a lot of businesses in the past. Had businesses that had millions in revenue and had 200 people working, but I've never had these kind of gross margins. So it's a massive opportunity for us to really grow from those margins. So we have that. Great margins on the drone itself. I said we also offer the professional services. So initially we weren't going to do that. But what we've discovered about our customers is a lot of land surveyors, it's not a question of purchasing the drone. They're used to purchasing high dollar equipment. It was them having the bandwidth and the expertise to do it, even though we made it as simple as possible for them. So they started asking me, why don't you just do it for us? Well, at first I was like, well, I don't know about this. With these great gross margins that we have in the services side as well, it became a no-brainer. And so we started services almost 2 years ago, and we've grown very rapidly in the services. The money is fantastic, and the demand is there, and that's another aspect of the market. So like I said, I've talked with lots of surveyors. Less than 5% have ever had a drone on any type of project. Not even just a baby camera drone to go take pretty pictures. Nothing. So we have almost 50,000 surveyors out there who are ready for this technology that have not used it yet, that don't understand the technology or the opportunity. So we're educating them, and when we get them on board, we become their drone department. So it's fantastic.
So when you say do it for them, be the service provider, what does that look like? Is that a human being or is that something else?
Yeah, well, what it is normally what happens, they go to our website, they fill in a form for a quote. It comes through HQ. They get a price within 24 hours. If they accept the quote, they sign, they pay half down. We schedule it wherever it's at. Our guys go do the job, get the data, we process it. That's something we also had demand for, so we created this year our data processing department. So we process it, send the deliverable to them. They get about 2 weeks. They check out the data, make sure everything meets their needs, and they pass the other half. And
so in this case, they're not buying the drone. They're in fact
No.
just having you be the service provider.
Correct. Now, our customers who have bought our drone, I believe I've built my businesses on extreme customer service. Okay, if you don't take care of your customer, you don't have a business. And admittedly, in the early days of a tech startup, you're not delivering a perfect product. You're delivering a kind of a science experiment, right? And you need to work hand in hand with those initial customers to learn from them, help them learn from you, and make sure they are satisfied. Then they become your big raving fans. And so that's what we've been able to do. In fact, I think we're at about 75% of our customers who bought our early platforms have always upgraded to our later platforms. So they love us. They love how we take care of them. They love the extra value that they can gain by using our drones.
So what percent of your business is going to just selling the drone directly to them versus those that you're providing the service to?
Sure. Historically, our revenues up until recently had been about half drone sales, half services. What we've seen is the sales cycle on the services side is a much shorter time frame. So our services side is growing rapidly. So it looks like it's going to shift on this Discovery 3 model. We'll probably shift our revenue. We'll shift probably about 75 services, 25 drones. Now, I have an announcement, okay, that we haven't released, okay. We are about 75% through development of our next drone platform. We've taken our 4 years of learning and engagement with our customers and how they use the technology. We've taken the pain points, we've taken in desired new features, and our target now is in next quarter, first quarter of 25, is to have our product in alpha and then in beta. This drone platform we're really excited about. It's going to be a lot smaller, it's going to fly longer, it's going to get more done easier. Elon, everybody knows Elon, he says the best part is no part. So we've greatly reduced the complexity for manufacturing, a lot less parts. Our system is already very robust, but this will be even more robust. And of course, it's bringing our costs down, which will bring the price down for our customers. But at the same time, we're going to expand our margin. So when we launch that, we expect to see getting back to 50-50 balance on revenue between services side and hardware sales.
How many surveyors are you working with today? How did you get to those surveyors? And what's the plan to grow the number of surveyors working with you?
Yeah, well, tech is new, right? That's why people get excited about tech. They want new tech. They want to get that, how's it going to shift and really impact the marketplace? So the drone technology is there. We've done that, okay? On the business side, getting those customers and getting the revenue, yes, we do the email sourcing and the mass marketing through email. Yes, we have a great website. Yes, we do the social media and we do some advertising through the normal internet type channels. Yes, we also did 27 trade shows last year, I believe. Okay, so there's a whole lot of digital and expected marketing. But what's not always expected nowadays is what I call the old school door knocking. So we have door knocked more surveyors than anybody else in the drone industry. And why is that? It's not a big secret, and I'm not afraid to share it here because it's hard to do. It's because we have no competition at the surveyor's door. There's plenty of competition in the email inboxes and on the web. There's plenty of competition at a trade show. But when one of our guys shows up at John Smith Surveying, remember I said they're small businesses? You walk right into reception. Hey, is Mr. Smith here? Let me see. Oh, yeah, he's in. You go sit down at his desk. You have a 30-minute conversation with him. He hasn't experienced drones. He's very cautious, okay? And you show him what you can offer. You tell him there's a money-back guarantee. Tries to find a project for you. You go do that first project. We've had 90% of our customers either say they're going to use us for their next job, or they actually do use us for their next jobs and jobs and jobs.
how is 2024 panning out in terms of revenues? What does that look like? And as you kind of look, 1-2 years down the road, where would you like to be?
Yeah, so this year we've been making some changes with how we've been delivering our services. It was a lot of learning as we scaled that growth. And as you can imagine, going from being in Tyler, Texas to working in 18 states is a big growth. So I expect our overall revenue should be similar to 23 for 24. Next year, we have to be careful with forward-looking statements and projections. So all the SEC stuff is there, okay? Make decisions based on our current offering that you can find at Start Engine. But I would say right now it's looking like we will probably have 3 to 5 times the revenue for 25 that we wind up with 24. So
when you think about the overall market opportunity, how large is it? How do you scope it for us?
Just our initial target market of the land surveying vertical, focusing on the land surveyors themselves, not the adjacent things like the civil engineering and construction and things like that. Just the land surveyors. It's $1 billion market, and here's how I come to that annually. On our statistics for the services jobs we do, the average land surveyor right now with us is doing about 17,000, a little more than 17,000 of revenue a year. Now, I do see that increasing as we're growing and scaling, as they're finding more opportunities and getting more comfortable with using drones. So if I figure 20,000 a year times 50,000 surveyors, that's $1 billion market. So that's our initial target. So it's a pretty good size to go at. And when you figure less than 5% of them have ever had drones on their job, less than 2% actually own a LiDAR drone. So if we have 5% adoption each year, that's a fantastic number. But one thing we didn't touch on, I want to make sure I get this out there. Early on from my prior experience in investing in drones, I saw that it didn't make sense to have Chinese drones scanning sensitive U.S. infrastructure. And part of our work we did early on was with the Seabees, the Navy, and the Air Force had done an audit of commercial off-the-shelf drones throughout the government. They found a third of those were sending back data to China whenever they were hooked up for firmware updates. So that's why you saw the DoD immediately start banning Chinese drones. Now what's been happening is pretty much the only thing the parties can agree on right now is we need to get rid of Chinese drones in the American market. Now, we designed our technology, we meant from the get-go to go to head-to-head with DJI because you can't be sure about the pace of regulation, right? But talk about a tailwind for us and other people in the drone market in the U.S. to have the regulations aligning where they're banning Chinese drones at the federal level, the state level, municipalities. Pretty soon they won't be able to work here. And so we're ready to jump right into that market. I expect the American adoption from ourselves for our target market of LiDAR ortho drones, and then for others that are camera drones that are used for police-related law enforcement things, search and rescue, and other types of markets. I expect it to really take off as China leaves the U.S. marketplace. And it's about time.
For those who are on the line, thinking about investing, what's your final pitch to them? I'll give you the last word.
Massive underpenetrated market, 50,000 customers that we know how to sell to, actual revenues, actual hardware in the market, and very high gross margins. An experienced team of drone developers with being led by an experienced businessman with several successful exits.
If you like what you heard on the show today, you can check out why SmartDrone scored a 4.4 out of 5 at kingscrowd.com. You can now invest on Start Engine, and please like, subscribe, and share our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so more listeners like you can find us. Thanks for listening.